In this video, I will talk about what is information, and in particular, I will look at a theory of information trilogy, which is informational organism interaction centric theory for information ecosystems. My name is Asif Gill, and I will take you through this new theory and what is information is all about. This theory is a part of a digital ecosystem information framework, which has different knowledge areas, and it's focused on the leading the information. It's about enabling the information environment and executing the information environment. So before discussing the details of this framework, which is based on informational organism interaction centric framework, I really need to talk about what is information. So in all this presentation, I'll be more focused on what is information, and in the future videos I will discuss about the detail of the framework and different components of it. So let's get started. What is information? When we deal with the ecosystem or any kind of a business, anything or daily life, what are we really looking at that information? So what we really need to understand, what is information we are dealing with in our normal day-to-day world and work. We look at the information provides a data, or information has embedded data elements, and those data elements are relevant to some kind of a context, which is described by semantics, which is called the content. And then that semantic and structure is stored somewhere in some kind of an information document, which we call information container. So really, information has, at least from our business point of view or daily life point of view, has a structure, semantic, and container. So that's what the information is. Information also has life cycle. Information can be discovered and then collected. It's important to know here information cannot be created, which I will discuss a little later on. In our universe, information has a limited supply or finite supply, and then we cannot create information, or we cannot destroy information. So really, we can discover and collect the information from our environment, and then we can look at classifying and securing the information, and then we're looking at the preparing and releasing the information for use, which is having access to information and then using it. And once we have used it, then we can archive and purge it, and then once it's purged, it can also restore and recycle. So there is no such thing called information deletion or generation in information lifecycle, which I will discuss a little bit more in the further slides. Information lifecycle gives an overview of how information travels or lives its life like any other living organism. But really, when we look at the information in use, where it's the most of value is resides, because information which is not in use has no value. So that's where information value chain concept comes into play, where information value is in its use in all aspects of our life is managed. There could be different ways or different stages of the information value chain. There, one way to look at that, we source the information, we consolidate the information, including we can transform, integrate, and make it ready for use and fit for purpose. And then finally, we consume that information, which in terms of generating reports on insights or analytics, you name it. And then based on those insights, analytics, we make decisions and take actions. So really, information goes through these very four value chain items, from sourcing, consolidation, consuming, to finally actioning. So that's where the information value chain comes into play. And then the question is that, yes, there is information, but how we understand the information? What is there? What does it look like? How we know there's information, there's not information, how we can feel the presence of information and absence of information. So that's where a theory of information trilogy comes into play. This is a nature-inspired theory of information, and the focus of this theory is about how we identify the information for information ecosystems inspired from the natural ecosystem. Natural ecosystem could have a metaphysical ecosystem which focus on about things, what is there and what is like in terms of the form of the information and information itself. And then we're looking at the biological system which is around us, which is living and non-living organisms, including humans, animals, and plants and other things, and their interaction with each other. And that's combined what I call natural ecosystem, and how from natural ecosystem we translate these concepts to identify information for our ecosystem or information ecosystem. So that's a bit of a translation. We're going to work it out in Theory of Information Trilogy. So Theory of Information Trilogy describes information as information is a matter, information is energy, and information is a state of both matter and energy. And matter, we can all know, it could be in different forms. It could be liquids, solids, gases, and plasma. And energy could be in different forms as well. And all these things combined, we can call that all things are information. So it's really an information of everything. So we can classify or recognize through this lens which our world, the physical world, is made of, and we can observe information everywhere. And that's what we call natural ecosystem view of the information. Having that view, what we can move further, we can observe. Let's look at the example of one experiment and observe. Let's say there's a food. Food has a matter, different kind of matter in the form of solids and liquids and other things. This matter has energy ensemble as well, and there is a matter in the state, let's say liquid, and the solids and other things. Both matter and energy is a part of this food. What if we look at that? If we look at as a human, humans, how they perceive when they look at the food. So humans actually having their eyes electromagnetic waves, energy to see that or detect that matter, energy, and state. And what they are actually detecting, which we call a food, actually that's an information. And once electromagnetic waves hit that food, that takes the information back to the brain, and brain actually visualize that, paint a picture in front of us as if it's a food in a different objects and color and stuff, depending on how our brain interprets it. So really, what are we looking at that? We are actually viewing the information, and our brain is detecting the information. So information is a matter, information is energy, and information is state as well. And that when information is processed here, it will visualize us the state of that particular matter, energy, and state. So essentially what we are observing, what we are processing is all information. So in this scenario, can we call it we are observing, processing, and eating information? So that's really an interesting concept where we're really looking at information as exists around us. Taking further to explain the theory of information trilogy, information, of course, okay, is a matter or energy or state, but okay, so what do we do with it? So the key for us is that in order to identify information around us, we can use these three basic concepts from our nature regarding information, and we translate that information for our own information ecosystem. So really now we're moving away from a natural ecosystem to more information oriented ecosystem. So example, we have a matter, energy, and states is when we put together, we can create an organism. So organism contain all these three things. So if we look at the organism, humans and elements and plants, other things, or non-living organism as well, if you study them, and then if we look at their interactions with each other as per ecosystem, we can start identifying the organism interact with places because they live at some place in some time. There's a time and space concept. Within the time and space concept, organism interact with other things like computers, food, we look at that. And then those organisms and their interactions are actually triggered by some kind of an event. So someone gonna start eating the food based on the event, that event of hungerness came into play. And that event actually created another event which you call eat food. So And that eating food even can spark other kind of a mechanism how to eat food, the process around there. And then there's a state of all the things, organism, places, time, as per we know that as per matter has a state. So they can have a state. They could be in the beginning, in the end, or start of the food. And then there's intuitions. That's about their satisfaction. Are they happy or sad? So that's also information. And the consequences. Are they full now? Are they energized now? Can they do more work? Because information we eat, and information also provide us energy to perform other kind of tasks. So here we can see that here all things around an organism, which we call informational organism, if we study their interactions, we can identify the really high level 9 elements which we can use to identify information elements for any digital ecosystem or information ecosystem or human ecosystem. So take a further example how these 9 elements can be further used, which we derived from the nature for our information ecosystem. So take an example of here. Here are those 9 elements, and if you take an example of that for a specific ecosystem, whether this could be a health, business, or agriculture, or any kind of a ecosystem, we can see that there are different actors, which we call organisms, individual organizations, animals, and plants can come into play. And the place could be a university, country, state, and where those organisms exist or interact with each other. And there's a date and time of their interaction, and things involved in their interaction. And then also there are different events they are sparking that interaction between organisms. And then there's a mechanism of how those interactions they come into play, which is the processes. And those interactions they start and in progress, a different state of it. And then those have intuitions during or and in the end of that interaction about their emotions, feelings, beliefs, and desired intentions. And finally, what outcome they achieve from through those interactions. So really, we're looking at informational organism and their interactions. If we focus on that, we can identify the information what we needed for developing a small mobile app to all the way to enterprise information management or universal information management. If you look at the theory of information trilogy, that's where the trilogy comes into play. The matter, state, and energy. And that is translated to an information. And that information is actually an organism. So essentially, organisms are information. Places are information, which our brain or organism brain process it and visualize that as a building. That's actually an information. Similarly, time and other things. And these organism, place, time, things can be further translated into the 3 things I mentioned about that: data, content, and its container, which is the document. And if we go further backwards, this matter is the information which is available to our universe. So information, what we see, is in the form of a matter, in the form of a state, in the form of energy. So information is a matter actually, and information is a state, and information is energy. And that is the translational layer which transform information elements into matter. If you look at the stone is an information, but actually is shown in the form of some kind of a solid matter. Now, where this information comes from? So there is a universal information tablet which is protected that supplies that information, that has both the commands and the information. And this information translation layer translate information in different languages for us. I might be thinking English, someone might be thinking in French to receive that information. So how that translation happens as well, and what information is released is controlled by this tablet, which humans don't have control to. Probably God has created an universal information tablet. From that, the information is already available in our environment, and that information is shown in the form of matter and state and energy. If you further translate, this is information also then available in the form of organism, places, and time. So we have a law of conservation about the energy and information, where information cannot be destroyed, cannot be created. This has already been created. It's a matter of how we can discover it. And that's the baseline for information trilogy. information has fundamental concept of matter, state, and energy. And what we're learning from here, how we can transform to identify elements which are consumable for our information ecosystem. And that I call information layers. I do not have knowledge beyond this translation layer. That's God's created work, who's a grand designer, and I have no control over it. I can see, observe as per physics or metaphysics or quantum physics up to here. I cannot see beyond that. And that's the human limitation. It's already been evident by many other scientists in the world. So in that perspective, here are the information principles which we can look at it, and they explain the information trilogy, the crux of it, based on the what we learn from the natural ecosystem. So these information principles are extracted based on the understanding of the nature ecosystem, and then we can apply these to our context. So that's sums up the information theory of information trilogy. There's a related work happening in the last few centuries. This work is not the same, but it could be related to human information processing theory, no-hiding theorem, Shannon's mathematical theory of communication, quantum information science, quantum information systems, black hole information paradox, theory of relativity, laws of thermodynamics, and law of information conservation. That sums up what is information and how the theory of information trilogy can help us to understand information from its natural context perspective. The way we stop here is not about the information processing. It's not about the information storage or management at this stage. This theory is all about how we recognize information. What is there in what form? And that's when information trilogy comes into play. Later on, this information trilogy theory can be associated and complement to Shannon's theory, which more focus on information processing and communication. So information, theory of information trilogy, and information, Shannon's information mathematical theory of communication can be combined together to design our environment for information sharing. Thank you very much. I'm happy to take any questions and can be contacted via email displayed on the screen. Thank you and enjoy. And I'll be back with more videos and information sharing sessions in future. Thank you.